Hi there, this is Becky from Nomadic Knits, and today I'm going to show you how to do the dip stitch that we are using in the Lonely Hearts Club Knit Along hat for this year, which is 2024. So it's probably been called different things before in many different places, but we're going to refer to it as the dip stitch, and you'll see it notated in your chart, and there are also written instructions in your pattern, but I thought I would just show you what it looks like to hopefully help make it a bit clearer for you. So if you were knitting your pattern, you would have at this point knit all the way up to the recommended height of the hat before you begin incorporating your contrast color for your first round of dip stitches. And the first round that you'll be doing is notated as dip stitch left 5 below. So before you get to that first dip stitch, you do have one purl stitch. And this will help you get your color connected here, your contrast color. So when I do a purl stitch as I'm connecting my color for the first time, if I'm adding a new color, I simply insert my needle as if to purl, wrap my yarn around, purl my stitch, and then bring it to the back. And now your yarn is anchored, you have your new color ready to go. And I just make sure that I am working from the ball end of my yarn. Okay, so we have our first dip stitch, which is, as I said, the dip stitch left 5 below. And the way that a dip stitch left works is that you're always going to count over 2 stitches. And because we are working into the 5th stitch below, I'm gonna actually use this little T-pin to help show you as I'm counting. So 2 stitches over, so this one right here. So then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this hole in the middle right here of this V is what we want to be working into. Now, if you're worried you're going to forget, you can always go ahead and mark that stitch. What might be easier to do is actually to mark the stitch below it, because we're going to be working right into the middle of that V. Okay, so for now, I'm going to take that out and I'm just going to count it as I go. So to do your dip stitch, we're going to over 2 and down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So insert your right hand needle right through that hole. Take your contrast color yarn, wrap it around your needle, and pull it out through the front. And to get the proper amount of tension on this, you basically want to make sure that it will reach up to this top row of stitches without puckering the stitches below. You don't want it too slack and you don't want it too tight. So you want to be able to find that happy medium. So that was your first dip stitch, and now you'll see in your chart that you are going to knit 3 stitches. And now you're going to do a dip stitch right. So that means you count 2 to the right and 5 down, because this is a dip stitch right 5 below. So again, we're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there we are, right back at that same stitch that we went into for our dip stitch left. And this is how it's always going to work. Once you've found that stitch that you're knitting through, that you're pulling your dip stitch through, over on this side for your dip stitch left, it's going to be the exact same one for your dip stitch right. So you really don't have to count again. So we're going to take our right hand needle again. Oops, sorry about that. knocked my camera, and scoop up that loose piece of yarn from the back and tug it up so that it reaches that top row of stitches without pulling. Okay, so now you see that those dip stitches create this little V or heart that sits on the outside of those 3 knit stitches. And this is how it's going to work all the way around for this first round of dip stitches. So your next stitch is a purl. And then we're going to do your dip stitch again. So we're going to count down, because this is 5 below again. So we go over 2 to the left and count down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And our needle goes through the front of that to scoop up that yarn in the back and pull it up here. Now we will knit our next 3 stitches. And we'll do our dip stitch right. So we already know where it's going because our dip stitch left did all the counting for us. So we can just aim our needle down there, wrap our yarn around and pull it through. Okay, so now we have our second dip stitch. Our next stitch is a purl. And as you're seeing this pattern present itself, I want to give you another sort of visual aid. We are always purling the purls and knitting the knits here. And your dip stitch is always going to fall, the point of it, the low point of that dip stitch is always going to fall in this middle row of knit stitches. So hopefully that will help you find a rhythm as you work your way around this project. So we're going to count over 2 to the left. So we're in our middle knit stitch here and down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you may notice as I'm doing this that I'm really pushing my project around to be able to work my needle through that stitch, that 5 below. So we do our 3 knit stitches. And we're going to complete this V here. So something that makes it, it's just sort of a habit that I've developed. So I think that it just makes it go a little bit more quickly and makes it feel a little bit less fiddly is by grabbing a hold of your project. And also I'm using this finger up here to prevent these stitches from going anywhere as I maneuver this needle, because you really are kind of cranking it down here to get into that stitch. So I'm holding everything in place and wrapping as if to knit, and then pulling that back up so that it lays nicely. So just walk through this one more time. So our purl over 2 and down 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pull that up through. Knit 3. And again, I'm grabbing the work down here and bracing this stitch up here as I rotate my needle down and through. Wrap the yarn around and pull it back up. So that's all there is to it. That is the dip stitch. And I'm going to finish working this round and I'll meet you back at the beginning to show you how we work the next round. Okay, so as you can see, I finished this first round of dip stitches here. I'm back at my beginning of round marker, and I've cut the contrast color because we're going to be working with our main color again here, and we're only ever working with one color at a time in this pattern. So our first stitch for this next round is a purl stitch. And I know I just said we're never working with more than one color per round here, but if you're looking at your chart, you'll notice that this next stitch here, the slip stitch, it is actually notated in your contrast color, and that is because we are slipping it. It is not because you have to be using two colors in one round. It's just that that color is remaining your contrast color because we're simply slipping the stitch, and we are slipping as if to purl with our yarn held to the back. Okay, and now we have 3 knit stitches. Once again, we are slipping as if to purl with our yarn held in back. Purl stitch, slip, knit 3, slip, purl. And something to be aware of is that you want to make sure that you are slipping the dip stitch and that it's not getting crossed over with one of your knit stitches. As long as you take the time to look at them, it's very easy to tell them apart. I just wanted to mention it so that you don't go on autopilot and accidentally get them crisscrossed, because those dip stitches are looser. So sometimes they end up laying across the top of your knit stitches. All right, so this is pretty simple, just some slipping, knitting, and purling. So I will finish this round, and then I will meet you back for the next. Okay, so we've come to the end of the round where we are just slipping our dip stitches, and we're still working in our main color here, and we're going to continue purling this first stitch always. And now it calls for a slip, slip, knit. So we're going to slip the first stitch, slip the second knit stitch, insert that front needle through, and knit. We have 1 knit stitch, and then we have a knit 2 together, so we're just going to knit these 2 stitches together. So you can see right there that we are successfully all back into our main color now once we do that. So again, we're going to slip, slip, knit, knit 1, and knit 2 together. Okay, so you can see how that looks now. I'll just do that a couple more times in case any of these are new to you. So again, we're always slipping that slipped stitch first, that dip stitch. So slip, slip, knit them together, regular knit, and then knit 2 together. So you just scoop up both of those stitches as if to knit. Okay. And when we're doing this slip, slip, knit, we are always slipping as if to knit. So we are coming in on this left-hand side of the stitch, slipping, slipping, Inserting this needle back through. Knit one, knit two together, purl one. So we're basically just doing mirrored decreases to get back to our regular 4-stitch ribbing pattern. And that's it, all the way around. And once you are done with this round, you are back into that 4-stitch ribbing pattern for a little bit before we begin our next round of dip stitches. So while you may have felt like that first round of working the dip stitch was a little bit fiddly and it took a little bit longer than a normal round might, that's really it. You only have to do that 3 times in this pattern, and then the rest of the knitting is very, very straightforward. I hope that you've enjoyed learning something new, and I'll come back and do a quick overview of the 3-stitch and 1-stitch dip stitches, just so that you can see how they work up as well. So I'll be back for that momentarily. All right, we finished up our last round of 4-stitch ribbing, and we are moving into a round of dip stitches again. And you'll notice that these dip stitches are dip stitch left 3 below. So our dip stitches are getting incrementally smaller as we progress through the hat pattern. Now the dip stitches are going to work just the same. So we're going to start by purling that first stitch. So now we've added our contrast color back in, and we are going to dip stitch left 3 below. So we're going to count over 2, 1, 2, and down 3, 1, 2, and 3. So we will stick the tip of our needle through that stitch, wrap as if to knit, and pull the yarn up through, just the same as we did for the 5-stitch dip stitch. We'll pull it up level to the rest of our stitches, and we'll knit 3, and then we're going back into that same hole, and you'll see that I'm doing the same thing where I'm bracing those stitches and holding this down here to insert the needle through there. And on the back side of that, I'm also putting my finger on the tip of my needle so that that yarn doesn't slip off. So I'm tugging it up to the same height as the rest of the stitches. Purl. So this is our dip stitch left 3 below, so we count over 2 stitches, and again, just like in the last round of dip stitches, it is always this middle stitch of the 3 knit stitches, and we're going to count down 3. So 1, 2, 3, wrap as if to knit, place my needle on the tip and pull it up through. Did our knit 3, and we are going back into that same stitch for our dip stitch right through 3 below. Wrap as if to knit and pull that yarn up through and make sure that it is level with the rest of your stitches. And you will continue on through the end of this round. We've arrived at our last round of dip stitches. So we're going to begin this round just as we began the previous two. We're adding our contrast color with a purl stitch. It's actually going to make that tail just a little bit longer. So I just tugged on it a little, find my working end here. And I'm going to make our first dip stitch, so it is a dip stitch left, one below. So I'm going to count over 2, which puts us in the middle of these 3 knit stitches that are part of our 4-stitch ribbing. So I'll count over 2 to the middle stitch and down 1. And that's where our first dip stitch falls. Tug it up to meet the same level. And I'm going to knit these next 3 stitches. We're going to dip stitch right one below, so we're going right back into that same stitch here. So this round is going to take a little bit more manipulation because that stitch is so close to your needles. So again, we're going to purl 1, dip stitch 1 below, so over 2, down 1, pull it up, knit 3, and we're going back into that same stitch again. So you can see here that I'm really holding on to my stitches because it is a little bit, I don't know exactly how to describe it. It's sort of a tighter fit, I guess, because we're working so closely to the needle here that it's, you don't have as much room to move, I suppose. So we've made our first dip stitch left. We'll knit 3. Just as before, I'm holding these stitches in place with this hand, with this finger, I should say, and I'm tugging on this a little bit to open up that stitch so that I can insert my needle through there. Wrapping as if to knit, using this back finger on the tip of this needle to hold that yarn in place as we pull it through. So if you find this fiddly, and you might, just know that this is it. This is your last round, and you are going to have this really cute pattern of stitches. And I think that these little tiny ones are the ones that most really resemble hearts, especially once you get your main color back on there. So enjoy, happy stitching.